Everyone who's come in person and online. I'm Rachel Kretzis. I'm a policy advisor at the UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, and my work's focused on food systems. So today we've got some really great presentations from UNDP and from the World Bank on their work on the importance of food systems, MEL, and the role for peer-to-peer exchange and learning in agricultural policy and subsidy repurposing. After the presentations, we'll also hear from three great panelists working on food systems transformation in this space, and look forward to hearing all of your questions. So first, I'd like to introduce Stefanos Fotiou, who's the director of the Office of the Sustainable Development Goals in FAO, and the director of the UN Food Systems Coordination Hub. Please set the scene with some opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Rachel, and it's nice to see you early morning here in FAO. I was explaining to the people that they are not from FAO, that FAO doesn't operate before 9 o'clock. I come here 7, but usually, you know, before 9, it's like an empty place here. So don't worry that you don't have a lot of people here. It's really what's happening. So you know better than me that food systems are both complicated and complex. And I think that we have done everything possible, and we do a lot of work, a lot of years now, to resolve the complication part, which is more technical, but the complexity is still there. And I was really thinking that the complexity is because the food systems are actually interlinked with so many aspects of development of life, you know, from poverty eradication to climate change, to livelihoods, to food security, to exports, to everything. But I think the last 4 years that I'm in this environment of food systems, because I'm an environmental scientist by background, and for 16 years in the UN I was doing environment, and now I do food systems. I think the system is very complex because of the different interests of the stakeholders around the food systems. Interests that they are not mutually aligned. And I have done the observation many times, and I've talked to my colleagues that, you know, there's a lot of fight happening when it comes to the food systems. And we see some fierce debate, unfortunately many times not to be based on facts and evidence, which make the situation very complex. And one of the most important questions is what it is as sustainable food systems. What is our big benchmark? You know, for the climate, we had the 1.5 degrees target, you know, and we have a very specific target there. Although this 1.5 degrees target for climate change, it means we need to achieve maybe hundreds of other indicators. We don't have the equivalent of 1.5 degrees for the food systems. And I don't think it's going to be possible to have an equivalent thing, because you need to talk about food security, so number of hunger, you talk about the hunger, the impact on environment, and all of them. But we do need for sure a better monitoring and evaluation framework to understand how the food systems are evolving. From 2021, when the Food Systems Summit happened, and I would even say from 2019, when the Food Systems Summit was proposed by the UN Secretary General, there is a process that, to me today, has come up to 3 major positive outcomes. One is that at the country level, we have a group of what we call the National Food System Conveners, which they try to apply this systems approach for food systems. And we are very pleased to see that in many countries, dozens of them, we have new governance modalities that they put together this systems approach. We have a lot of countries that they have established specific coordinating units, many of them reporting to the Prime Minister or to the President. We have countries that they have put the food systems under the Planning Ministry or the Development Ministry. And this is happening. And the idea that we have this group of 160 national conveners that they keep the agenda of the food systems alive is extremely important. The second, I think, big achievement is that we see that the food systems now, agendas are embedded in the national development planning more than ever. We have done a survey with countries before the UNFSS +4 we had in Addis Abeba, and 63% of the respondents, we got 110 response, 63% they said that they have embedded their food system transformations into their national development plans. And the third big realization for me is that we have a huge ecosystem of support of non-state actors, from civil society, academia, indigenous people, women, farmers, youth, private sector, that it's really working sometimes with conflicting interests, as I told you in the very beginning, on the food systems. And we witnessed this plethora and diversity of non-state actors in Addis Abeba when we had the UNFSS +4, where we had more than 700 non-state actors participating in person there. Still, across the countries, there's one question that is unclear: how we can support the countries in designing integrated monitoring and evaluation frameworks. And I have to share with you here that many times, a lot of countries, they have come to the UN Food System Coordination Hub and they say, we need a monitoring and evaluation framework. And we tell them, this is not our job. The hub is not here to substitute the work that agencies like FAO, UNDP, FAO, WFP, UNEP are doing. We are here to bring together the work. And as my good friend Andrew knows, for a couple of years now, I'm asking the so-called UN Task Force on Food Systems Coordination. There is a task force, 22 agencies there, yeah? I think. More than 22 agencies. And I'm asking this task force to come up with a comprehensive monitoring and evaluation framework that we can propose to the countries. And I think that this could be a very, very big service we will do to the countries. But I want to say that today, with the work initiated by MEL 360, this aspiration could become a realization. And I do know that we will listen to contributions from UNDP and the World Bank on how we strengthen monitoring and evaluation. And also, we will listen about concrete examples from Malawi and Zambia. So I think this is an important discussion. I really need to reinforce the message that the countries wait from the UN system to give them something that it's coherent, it's integrated, and they want one thing. Because right now they are bombarded from different evaluation and monitoring frameworks. And it's not that they don't have the capacity to choose, but they're extremely perplexed on why the UN could not come with one single integrated framework. And this monitoring and evaluation framework should be aspirational, of course, because we want to see change in the future in all these areas of environment, social protection, hunger, health, but at the same time it should be pragmatic and it should be feasible and achievable. We should not end up with a situation that we have 200 indicators and for 70 of them we have no methodologies and no data, as it happens many times. So let's foster more systems thinking and adaptive learning and come all together. And I thank you very much for inviting me to this event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefanos. Give some round of applause for very helpful opening framing remarks about some of the challenges and opportunities to improve on working on food systems and monitoring evaluation. And that leads very nicely into our first presentation from Andrew Bavanek, the Global Head of Food Systems Team at UNDP. If we could go to the next slide. So Andrew's going to give a high-level introduction to the MEL 360 tool and focus on the food systems toolkit and its role in supporting evidence-based decision-making, adaptive learning, and accountability in food systems.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Stefanos, for the introductory remarks. Hello, everyone. Can you just about see everyone on the projection box? So yes, I'm Andrew Bavanek. I head up food systems at UNDP. And then also, as Stefanos mentioning, I'm the co-chair of the UN Task Force for Food Systems. Just before I start this presentation, I'm often asked, why is UNDP working on these types of topics, not just FAO and the other Rome-based agencies. So just a quick background. I mean, at UNDP, you're all food systems experts, you're all working on agriculture, so you're all very aware, of course, that food systems is central to practically every single SDG, everything to do with sustainable development, and so UNDP has a very large portfolio of projects supporting agriculture food systems in the billions. And I've been working particularly on Jeff-funded projects over the last 20 years at UNDP, so I've been overseeing hundreds of millions of dollars of technical assistance in project designs, project implementation. And, you know, I've always felt when it comes to monitoring what projects are progressing on, how teams are managing their implementation and learning as they're going, how projects are evaluated, that there's something missing, that they're not quite looking at the right things. And as Stefanos said, this is in large part because, particularly when we're looking at food systems or agricultural systems, they are really complex. And so I personally, over the years, have felt that we need to elevate and evolve the way projects are designed and implemented, particularly with regard to monitoring, to better understand how they are linking and contributing to systems change. And that's a big task, and I think that's a big gap. And so therefore, we've spent the last 2 years with partners formulating new guidance on systems thinking for MEL, for monitoring, evaluation, and learning, for food systems projects and food systems transformation. And that's what I'm going to talk you through today. We're actually launching this guidance today here and also simultaneously globally from New York. And I think we've all left some cards on the table that have QR codes to the links for this guidance. But I really just wanted to give that setting and context setting, and, you know, my personal opinion at least, that this is really key. So I'm going to run through these first slides quite quickly. I don't know, it's always hard with audiences. You all have different levels of expertise, experience on monitoring, learning, evaluation. But, you know, as I said, this work is not to replace or substitute MEL. I'm just going to call it MEL, so I don't have to keep repeating the words. But it's not supposed to substitute the MEL that is already going on in all of your work, all of your projects and interventions. It's to be additional to that and to try to help practitioners embrace and capture better the complexity of the systems in which we are working. So what we've tried to distill it down to is three key elements to this. And what I'd say that this guidance is about an approach. It's not prescriptive. There are already there's a lot of MEL out there already. There's the countdown dashboard, which has very comprehensive indicators about change, biophysical, economic, etc. But this is not looking at that. This is sort of going more structural, more systemic, let's say. And so a part of this guidance is to help practitioners understand the system in which we are operating, in which you're trying to intervene. It's then really trying to understand how the intervention you're working on is contributing to that system and that system change. So this is really, for me, key. And then it's also how to centralize learning during implementation and not just leave it to evaluations and external assessments, but how to help teams centralize learning in a more dynamic way, which is absolutely fundamental in the dynamic world we're living in. So this could be a whole lecture series, but we particularly think that this type of systems thinking is vital for those working on food systems, because food systems in particular are extremely complex for the reasons Stefanos mentioned, and I'm tempted to get into them, but I won't, because there are just so many reasons why, particularly we're dealing with intervention in food systems, we have to be looking at the system level. You just can't focus on the local prices. Local food prices are completely influenced by global food prices, global trade policies. All levels are interacting, and there are just so many more reasons. So I'm not going to get into it, but we've got to take this into account. We can't shy away from complexity. We have to find better ways to deal with it, and this guidance is supposed to help with this. So we've called it MEL 360. The idea of 360, of course, is you're looking everywhere around the whole place. And it really is we've thought about it a lot, the audience is funders. Funders have to understand that systems MEL is key and put money into it in their projects, because otherwise projects won't have the capacity to do it. But it's for the designers, those designing projects, so the interventions are more systemic, and for the implementation teams, as I said. So implementation teams really have a better understanding and awareness during the years of implementation of where their project is going in contribution. So again, you'll see it's been designed in this way to have a component around design elements for projects, and then adaptive learning, and then also it's appropriate for portfolios. And this is what I think donors particularly will find interesting when donors are funding projects across a program in a country or a thematic theme. We can be using this type of guidance and approach to be aggregating results and seeing programmatic contribution to systems change. So this is, I've been sharing, it's been a bit of a headache, an intellectual challenge. We've had a team working on this for 2 years, but we really wanted it to be built by practitioners because we want it to be applied and useful. We've consulted with over 77 organizations with over 160 experts contributing to it. If you are a systems MEL expert and we didn't consult with you, I apologize. There's plenty of time to still get involved. we talked with you guys, but we really spent a lot of time trying to make sure we were bringing something new to the table, and we were really harvesting expertise around the world into this work. And it's, as I said, it's taken around 2 years. So we've sort of, the way I look at this, and I'll talk about it a bit later, we've really helped incubate this and get this to a stage now where we can start rolling it out. So just quickly, the guidance itself, we actually did this in partnership with the Strategic Innovation Unit at UNDP, who prepared, they are sort of systems MEL experts generally, so they prepared a general guide on systems MEL that could be applicable across any sector. And then my team focused specifically on making this fit for purpose for food systems. And what you'll see is we divided it into 2 main sections, what we call the orientation lens, which is to help designers in the design phase, and then the spiral, which is for implementation phase. And then we have a whole section on all the tools that are out there. So we really see this as sort of a hub where you can go for resources, not just this guidance, but all the tools that are out there of relevance. And I've got a slide on that. So just to show, this is on the web, this is how it looks. Give you just a snapshot, but you can go to the QR code. It's very interactive. We put a lot of effort into the design. We're aware the substance may not be riveting. So we tried to make it as dynamic as possible so people will stay captivated. Okay. So we said we have a platform, we have real-life examples in it, we have the tools, and this is just the components. I'm not going to get into them, but this is really important. The first is strategic intent. It's like your North Star. It's beyond the project objective. What is your vision for food systems transformation? What are the boundaries of the system you're looking at? And then what is your sphere of influence? And these are all very fundamental elements that I think all projects interventions should be looking at. This is absolutely innovative. This is where we're advancing from looking at outputs to looking at underlying structural patterns and barriers to change. And this is where we want all projects to go and to start thinking about how to measure changes in these patterns, power dynamics, mindsets, behaviors. This is the frontier of really trying to assess where change happens. The spiral then, this is all about adaptive management and learning during project implementation, looking at patterns, shifting course. I think this will be really powerful for project implementation teams to stay on course and really figure out how best they utilize their resources. This is just an example of all the tools that are out there that we are linked to: systems mapping, power mapping, signals of change, etc. And that's it. So I know I'm being rushed here. There's a lot to go through. I think this is exciting and significant. As I said, I've been doing M&E for 20 years, and I think this is a new approach that will really help your teams, your programs better track shifts in the system, better understand the contribution you're making to the system, and learn as you go. So I just want to leave it at that we've got this guidance now. The real challenge now will be to roll it out, internalize it within your institutions. We want to bring on more partners. This is not a UNDP document. As Stefano said, we're now going to take it to the UN task force. We want this to be a UN product. We want it to be used by everyone. So if anyone is interested, let us know, and we can help with inductions and more detailed guidance through the website, and hopefully build the capacity so you yourselves will be rolling it out in your projects and in your countries. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for that presentation. And it's great to see a tool turning evidence into action. We're going to move slightly from the detail of monitoring evaluation to sort of evidence of learning in action. So I invite Sergei Zoria, the global lead for public policy and expenditures at the World Bank, to present to us about the bank's work on agricultural policy reform, subsidy repurposing, and looking at some of their learning and impact programs. Over to you, Sergei.
Thank you, Rachel. Good morning, everyone. I would like to sit here and see the audience. So maybe for the next renovation of the FAO, the suggestion would be to put the monitor for the speaker so we don't have to go back. That's why I will be looking on my phone, so apologies. Yeah, but then I will be sitting back. Maybe I can go. No, I will take the clicker. So, food system transformation requires financing. And the World Bank is a lot about financing, external financing. If you think about World Bank Group, if you add together all multilateral development banks, per year the World Bank provides more financing for food system transformation than all MDBs together. So it's really our comparative advantage. But at the same time, we work a lot with the governments on the domestic resource mobilization and spending the domestic resources right. There is a lot of, and that work feeds really into our dialogue on the external financing, require a lot of conversation about the impacts, what works, what doesn't work, what kind of data we need, how we approach it. And so while Stefano and Andrew talk about the complexity of the food system, even if you talk about a bit narrower space financing, it's complex enough, I would say so. So let me run a little bit on with us what our recent thinking in the engagement with the government on repurposing of agricultural support. So globally, governments spend more than $800 billion on agriculture. Definitely there are differences between countries, regions, but the reason is also that we capture 800 billion, that our data set is quite limited. It's about 90 countries out of 160 plus. And so we have the commitment at the COP28 from the governments around the world, 160 governments committed to reorient and improve the impact of their domestic resources to achieve sustainable food systems transformation. It goes beyond the climate action. It goes improved food security, improved nutrition, improved climate action at the same time. We have, as I said, we have our comparative advantage that our knowledge and engagement come with financing. And we have a proximity to the clients, and that makes us uniquely positioned to influence a lot what's happening at the country level. So let me just 4 areas where I would like to emphasize how we address improving domestic resource mobilization or repurposing agricultural support for achieve better results, and how we learn from it and how we feed that back into the decision-making process. So I'll talk about the data. I'll talk about using the data for analysis, which is public expenditure reviews. We'll talk about, well, I say we talk about, we'll have one slide and 1 minute, on financing, and we then talk about the policy dialogues and the impact evaluation and the impact programs as the part of the package. So let me start with the data. Right now in the global database, we have about between 85, 90 countries, 80 countries some years. The data come from 5 institutions, OECD, Inter-American Development Bank, FAO, World Bank, and IFPRI is working on us methodologically of adding apples to apples, because each institution has a little bit different methodology at the end of the day, right? So, but you need to, when you add up, when you aggregate at the global level, you need to have the same methodology. We have a plan, we have the budgeted plan, it's not just plan, it's happening, to expand the database by 30 countries. On the left side, you can see where the coverage, and you see where the biggest gap is in terms of data. It's here in the middle, it's in sub-Saharan Africa. A lot of countries are not part of the global database. On the right side, you see the plan which countries we plan to cover in the next 3 years, and it's a joint project, as I say, among 5 institutions, where we really try to bring together our capacity, our budgets, our teams together, because the agricultural support is not only budget support, but also the price incentives, which goes, transfers from consumers to farmers as a result either of trade policy or the other support instruments coming from the government side, not from the budget side, right? And so it's really complex endeavor. There is a reason why there is such a knowledge gap in many sub-Saharan African countries. It's not easy to get that data. We're really trying to do the concerted efforts to get it now. Second, data is the baseline, but is the start of the conversation. And we have the diagnostic tool on how to analyze the data and provide advice to the governments on repurposing options, on the options for change, for options for reforms, and the implications of those options. So we do so-called agricultural public expenditure reviews, engaged since 2021 in about 43 countries. You have the list of countries where we complete it. You have the list of countries where it's ongoing. In many countries, we do the repeater. It means we've done first, and then there is an interest of looking deeper into selected programs. Then we come back. It's all demand-driven. The World Bank very rarely, okay, we do supply-driven tasks, but if the government does not want to engage with us on public expenditure reviews, it's become not very useful exercise, because then we do just for ourselves, and that's not sufficient. So typically, I have more demand than we have resources to co-finance this work, but there is a really momentum to look on the data. That's why we focus on data, and then to analyze the data, because of the 2 reasons. I mean, the public expenditure review is not a new instrument, but it got the momentum in the last 5 years for 2 reasons. First is the fiscal deficits are growing, not new, but really climate change starts to be painful at the country level. And status quo is no longer feasible. And so the governments understand this from the adaptation point of view, climate adaptation, there are changes needs to be made. And again, financing, if you want to make transition, you need to finance it. And so there's a lot of conversation how we can relocate funds, how we can improve funds, and public expenditure review offer the first step to understand those options. Third, in addition to analytical work, we've been engaged, we've been engaged in the financing. We have 3 instruments to finance. We either provide money to budget for subject to prior actions, typically legal actions. We work on the government or the outcome-based financing, which is program for results. And we can provide investment support to pilot options. In the panel discussion today, we will hear the stories and the feedback from the government of Zambia, the president of Farmer Association in Malawi, and the NGO supporting our work in Malawi, in those last two columns, where we are providing financing to test different options, how to improve the design of the subsidy reforms. input subsidies. It's not about the elimination of subsidies. Agriculture needs financing. Africa needs using more inputs. So the question is how to use existing resources much more effective to achieve better results. And so we are trying to use the different financing instruments, and we already influence through our engagement $13 billion of the government spending, which is when you compare with the global 800 billion, it's a small peanuts. But if you look on our client countries who are developing countries, that's a significant amount, because the global US and EU account for maybe 45% of total, and India and China for the remaining 30%, and then all other countries have a remaining amount of money. So the examples, two more slides, the examples of our repurposing engagement where many governments in Africa region has the input subsidy programs. They are very often focused on nitrogen. They are not targeted well. They are using blanket fertilizer recommendations. They are not using this site specific. There is private sector play minimum role in many places. So it's really an effort in all of these countries in Asia and in Africa region. So we are having recipient executed projects where the government is pilot with our help different technical options, how they can strengthen the impact of the programs. The expectations are that we have a learning process which will be part of the impact evaluation, which will feed back into the discussion of the reform of the overall subsidy in these countries. Finally, we are supporting this, our engagement on repurposing through policy dialogues. It's an opportunity we are doing together with our partners, with UK FCDO, since 2021, from COP26, where we are using the opportunity to share the experience between Global North and Global South on the subsidy reforms. There's a lot of political economy around it, and very often I would like to create the space for government to talk about it and share experiences. We are in the World Bank on the right side. We are moving to so-called impact programs. It's a bit heavy slide, I'm sorry. Should have done it's a bit smaller, less text. But we are moving into the impact programs, which is selective knowledge products on selected issues where we would have 3-4 year engagement with a small group of the countries, with the government to really help them to gain the knowledge from each other and from externally on selected issues. So in agricultural globally, we'll have only 2 impact programs. One is on repurposing fertilizer subsidies for soil health in Africa. And in Asia, it will be scaling next generation rice, which is a lot about the low emission rice and how to get it moving. All of these technologies, there are best examples, are not new for our countries. The problem, the adoption remains low. We really would like to unlock that adoption challenges through the more focused interactions, peer-to-peer learning, and underpin our financing. In all of these countries, we have investment projects. We can have new investment projects. If we identify the government is moving in the right direction, we'll be happy to mobilize funds to help them into that way. And finally, this all together contributes to the global policy dialogues, where we try to also foster the cross-regional experience. And we had one of those meetings yesterday at SEAT in Rome. So I would like to conclude with giving you the scan and the input, and then the link to the website. It became public 3 months ago, or maybe 2 months ago. It has all of the information about what I was talking about. You can get access to any project appraisal document on financing. There are about 53. You can go and learn what in each country and each project is doing. We all completed public expenditure reviews are there. Everything which will be completed will be put on the website. There is a lot of training materials, examples of engagements, and soon as our impact program will scale up, we will put a lot of materials and information about that impact program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sergey. It's great to hear kind of another example about the importance of dialogue and peer-to-peer learning and how that can drive food systems transformation. So I'm just going to ask people to shift around slightly. So if you wouldn't mind moving to the side, we'll we're moving to a panel discussion now, and then we will have time at the end for questions. So I will try and keep us to time. So for this panel, we've invited some people to come and share their experiences of agricultural policy reform and how strong monitoring, evaluation, and learning has both improved outcomes in their work and can also serve as important examples for other countries, considering the transformation of their food systems. So first, I'd like to welcome to the stage Dan Schuttenbelt, who's the impact measurement strategist and accelerator at Climate, which is a think and do tank. And Dan has worked in Southern and Eastern Africa and other regions and facilitated dialogues and learning around subsidy repurposing, and also leads on the Voices for JRT project, a global initiative that amplifies civil society perspectives in policy processes across multiple continents. Next, I'd like to welcome Dr. Nakumbu Nalwima, the first Secretary Agriculture and Alternative Permanent Representative to the Rome-based agencies at the Embassy of Zambia in Italy. And Nakumbu has previously worked in the Ministry of Agriculture in Zambia in the Department of Agribusiness and Marketing before taking up this role in Italy. Okay, and we have one participant online who we are just struggling slightly. I will just introduce him and we can get started, and maybe we can try and get him to rejoin. I think he's just having some issues, but Sergey mentioned him earlier. His name is Jacob Narongo. He's the Chief Executive Officer for the Farmers Union of Malawi, who also has experience working on agricultural policy and regulatory reforms, and has kind of been a part of processes with the government on providing policy and technical oversight. So apologies, I think we're trying to grapple with the new Zoom rules, but perhaps my FAO colleague can try to get him to join online. Okay, we'll start with the other questions, and hopefully Jacob can join us shortly. So first, wanted to ask Nakumbu about some work in Zambia. So the government of Zambia is undertaking strategic policy reforms to maximize the impact of public spending, working to align agricultural policies with more sustainable, climate resilient, and private sector driven growth. So it'd be great to hear about the e-voucher scheme that Zambia is rolling out and how the government has managed this transition and what key lessons have emerged from its implementation.
Thank you so much. Good morning. I'm going to share the Zambian experience on migration from the direct input supply modality to the e-voucher system. So I'll give a bit of a background of the FISIP. So the FISIP was introduced in 2002 to enhance access to inputs by smallholder farmers at affordable cost and increase the participation and competitiveness of private sector in the supply and distribution of agriculture inputs. So at the moment, FISIP is being implemented in all the 116 districts in the country with a target of 1,024,434 beneficiaries. The implementation modalities have been alternating between the direct input supply modality and the e-voucher modality. And moving on to the migration, the Zambian government has effectively managed the transition to an e-voucher system for the FISIP through various strategic initiatives, which I'm going to highlight. Firstly, the government made a decision to roll out the e-voucher 100%. So in 2002, the Zambian government, the Cabinet Office, granted the Ministry of Agriculture authority to commence the implementation of a 3-year migration of FISIP from direct input supply to e-voucher. So the ministry commenced the migration of the FISIP from the direct input supply, starting with 2 provinces, Central and Lusaka provinces. And during the 2023-2024 season, the pilot was started in 17 districts. Then we moved on to 74 districts in 2024-2025 farming season. And for this season, all the 116 districts will actually distribute the inputs through the e-voucher modality. So the other key issue that has been quite critical in this migration is the digital infrastructure. So the Zambia Integrated Management Information System is used for implementing the e-voucher. So the ZIAMIS, this is abbreviated as the ZIAMIS. The ZIAMIS is a one-stop platform for all FISIP-related information and transactions. And all the FISIP transactions are actually done on the ZIAMIS. So all agro input suppliers and other service providers participating on FISIP have respective portals. The ZIAMIS also hosts the farmer register, and all the farmer-related information at national, provincial, and district level is actually on this system. Even the national district extension officers also have credentials, specific credentials on the ZIAMIS. So the other key issue that has been key in this migration is also capacity building of all the key stakeholders, starting from raising awareness among the farmers, the beneficiaries, the extension officers, as well as the agro dealers. And the verification also, the farmer verification has also been key. Over 1 million farmers were successfully verified in the ZIAMIS system, with a 99% redemption rate achieved in the pilot district. So we also had a cleanup where we removed 212,851 ineligible beneficiaries, therefore improving targeting, and we also witnessed the onboarding of 208,594 farmers as first-time beneficiaries on the FISIP. So moving on to the lessons learned, due to the migration of the e-voucher, we actually saw that this increased the farmer choice in terms of inputs. So previously, the farmers could only get fertilizer and maize seed, but moving on to the e-voucher system, farmers are able to redeem a variety of inputs, including soybeans, rice, as well as cowpeas, beans, including other equipment and equipment related to farm mechanization. So we've seen that there's an increased farmer choice in terms of access to inputs. Then we also see that there's timely access and improved efficiency. Farmers are able to access inputs on time. The e-voucher has also reduced overhead costs and wastage associated with manual systems, ensuring timely access to essential inputs. Then we also see that there's been job creation. The program has created over 5,000 private sector jobs and stimulated economic growth in rural areas. And in line with the private sector participation, the direct input supply modality was crowding out the private sector. So with the e-voucher system, we see that there's increased participation from the private sector, and there's also increased competition as well as improved input quality. And we've seen the participation of over 631 agro dealers. Then we've also seen a cost saving in terms of government expenditure, because with the direct input supply modality, the government had to buy the inputs, engage transporters to take the inputs to the districts, as well as engage warehouse managers to distribute the inputs to the farmers. But the e-voucher system has cut out such costs. And lastly, there's also been real-time monitoring. Through the ZIAMIS, we're able to generate real-time reports, starting from the number of farmers that have partially redeemed the inputs, fully redeemed the inputs, as well as the agro-dealer transactions. So I think, in short, I think those are the key lessons. Thank you.
Thank you, Nakumba. It's great to have an example of policy reform that also has a strong monitoring evaluation component and some great figures there about the impact that it's already had. I think we do have Jacob now with us. Jacob, hopefully you can hear us. I don't know if you can turn your camera on and then we can see you.
Yes, I'm able to hear you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
We can see you and we can hear you. So maybe now we'll move to speak to you a little bit about the experience in Malawi on piloting soil health packages and incentives and trying to identify mechanisms to reward farmers who adopt sustainable soil health practices. So I know that you've worked with Dan, with Climate, on some country-level consultations with various stakeholders working on these issues. So it'd be great if you could tell us about the key successes and challenges from your perspective in developing the soil health pilot in Malawi, and also how critical the farmer engagement was to its implementation.
Thank you and good morning. First of all, let me thank you for inviting me to be part of this great panel. But also I've really benefited from the presentation that has just been made on food systems MEL. So in Malawi, we, as Farmers Union of Malawi, we engaged with Climate to begin a process of consultation on soil health. Actually, this process started way back when we had a regional conference that was organized by the Southern Africa Confederation of Agricultural Unions in Johannesburg, where we started talking about repurposing and how farmer organizations can engage in this process with their national governments at the SADC level. So after that meeting in Johannesburg, that's when we started a process at the national level to look at how we can influence repurposing public support into the agricultural space, especially looking at agriculture subsidy reforms. So we have gone through quite a process in Malawi. The first process that we did with Climate was to kind of do a paper that we developed reflecting on the issues related to productivity, low productivity of agriculture across Malawi and across the continent, of course, and then how we can address the issues of soil health. And one of the critical areas that we are focusing on was how can we incentivize farmers to really invest in soil health. I think as it was indicated already in the presentation, that the adoption of different technologies that can address soil health, the adoption rate is very low. So the issue really was to look at how can we incentivize farmers to invest in soil health. And so we started the process of stakeholder consultation. We came up with a list of stakeholders, quite diverse. We invited development partners, including the World Bank, FCDO, Embassy of Ireland, and others. We invited policy think tanks like the Mapata Institute, CAD at Bunda, and other programs like Agricultural Transformation Initiative, Center for Agricultural Transformation, CAT. We also invited the university to be part of the process. So we started with a kind of a brainstorming session with these different partners using the discussion starter that we had developed. And then from that process, a number of proposals came up in terms of technology that we could use to address issues of soil pH, soil carbon, and nutrient improvement in the soil. Then after we had developed the first draft of the pilot project, then we also refined the concept through having smaller set of meetings with key informants like experts that helped us to refine the proposal. The World Bank got interested, and we saw that the bank worked with the Ministry of Agriculture to kind of embed the pilot within an ongoing flagship program, the Malawi Food Resilience Program, Food Systems Resilience Program. And so this project, the pilot project, has taken off well. Basically, we are testing a number of input combinations. Like, for example, when we did the selection of the beneficiaries for the pilot, we are distributing four sets of inputs. So, for example, there are a number of farmers that are getting 2 bags of manufactured organomineral fertilizers, which are being produced by private sector. And then we have another set of farmers that are getting 2 bags of inorganic fertilizer for both basal and top dressing, plus 8 bags of own-sourced compost, so farmers are able to combine. And then we have another set of farmers that are getting 2 bags of inorganic fertilizers and 2 bags of lime to address the issue of pH. And then we have another set that is getting on-made organo-mineral fertilizers. So they are making what we call in Malawi bare fertilizers. So they are testing these inputs to look at to what extent they can address the various nutrient amendments. And beyond this, we are also combining with various soil and water conservation measures, like minimum tillage, boundary planting, crop residues on soil surface, but also we have also integrated the diversification options. So legume intercropping or rotations, fertilizer trees. So it's a combination of technologies that are being tested in this pilot project. So maybe for a start, let me stop there, and maybe you can have follow-up questions.
Thank you so much, Jacob, for that overview. We're running a little bit out of time, so I'm going to go very quickly to Dan and then open to the floor so that we have time for questions. So perhaps, Dan, kind of building on that and knowing that you were also involved in that project, you could talk a little bit about Clymeet's role in supporting multi-stakeholder processes, but also maybe touch on how building a strong evidence base contributed to the success in the case of the soil health pilot in Malawi.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'll try and answer that as quickly and concisely as possible. So Clymeet is a think and do tank, and I think the role of Clymeet as an organization or types of organizations, we really see ourselves as a broker or a facilitator of impact. So, you know, policies and programs really need to work for the users or the end users, and a disconnect between policy and reality really leads to policies that don't usually work. So in terms of, we organize a lot of multi-stakeholder engagements, like the one that Jacob mentioned around the Malawi soil health pilot. And I think there's kind of 3 key components where organizations like Clymeet can play an important role. And that is around engagement, evidence, and outreach. So first of all, just the I guess, simple idea of providing a platform for such multi-stakeholder engagement. So keeping the people that you engage with very diverse, both in terms of the sectors they come from, as well as some of the thematics they touch on. So providing kind of somewhat of a systems approach to discussion. So maybe not focusing a conversation completely only on subsidy repurposing, but also going beyond that, kind of looking at it from a livelihoods perspective, a poverty alleviation perspective, to ensure that it kind of fits into different spaces. Then I think evidence, so that was part of your question, Rachel, is really important, both bringing evidence to such multi-stakeholder engagements. We've really learned that people appreciate the presence of kind of scientists or experts in the field coming also to these engagements to provide context for discussion. And then I also believe that multi-stakeholder engagement is a huge part of providing an evidence base for feeding into policies and programs. So as we saw, I think in the case for Malawi, there was really genuine discussion and genuine interactions that was able to create a space for ideation as well, and brainstorming between the different actors that were there. And then I think lastly is this piece which is outreach. So there's a lot of knowledge and evidence already out there. And I think multi-stakeholder platforms, and especially an organization like Climate, thinks that we don't produce our own evidence, but we kind of synthesize all the evidence that's coming out of these engagements and try to communicate them both to the people involved in these engagements as well as externally in new creative ways to provide the right framing for the right people. To actually be able to take it forward into action. And in that, I think organizations like Climate can provide kind of an external perspective that can take a step back and provide that new framing. And then just to round it off, I think really important and speaks to kind of the first presentation and all the discussions we've been having is that it's always really important and something we really learned from our Malawi process to have strong follow-up and monitoring and evaluation. So understanding where the consultations that we had, where it went wrong and how we can learn from that. And ensuring that the participants in that also continue to be involved moving forward because those engagements provide a lot of buy-in and momentum into programs and policies. So ensuring that they continue to be involved kind of afterwards is really, really important so that they stay on board and stay interested in follow-up.
Thank you so much, Dan. Great to hear about how MEL is important at every stage of the journey. So we have just less than 15 minutes, which hopefully is a good amount of time. So welcome questions from the floor. I'm not sure if we can take questions online, but please go ahead.
Yes, I'm Severin with the ESF, which is the Food Systems and Food Safety Division at FAO. I have a question for Andrew. It was fascinating to hear what you were talking about, and as I'm learning about systems MEL and digging into it, it seems that there is there's almost like two separate systems. Like there's part of MEL that's looking at the impact of a project across the agri-food system and the ripple effects, and then you have another part of MEL that you also mentioned exists that is looking at, say, the implementation of a project in an iterative way to track its impacts, right? So I see these as very often presented as two separate methodologies, where at the same time they both need to be very learning-oriented and adaptive, right? And they're both essentially looking at the same kind of criteria, like the inverted triangle that you mentioned, right? I don't know if I'm being clear in that. I mean, I see the systems MEL, the impact on the system, and then the actual tracking of the impact of a project. So I just wonder, since these are so often presented as two very separate methodologies, like what are the linkages that you see between them, right? There's certain questions that both are addressing. Like how do you put them both together in a context of a project? And if I could ask one more question, just to put it on the floor, about the World Bank and the Malawi and Zambia. Yeah, thanks. It's so interesting to hear about the repurposing of these funds and more investment in paying attention to soil health. But I was wondering how far you were going with that, because when we talk about soil health, I mean, I understood you're talking more about the optimization of use of inputs, but are you actually going so far as to say repurposing for the purposes of agroecology or regenerative agriculture? I mean, and if not that far, then why not? Yeah.
Thank you. Andrew, do you want to start? And then we'll go to the second question.
Is it possible to put my slides back on while I talk? Because, thanks for that. I think it's a good clarification, because I think what we're trying to present in this guidance is not a dual system. So you have your standard M&E, which is looking at project outputs. I mean, that's what conventional M&E does. They're tracking the progress of the project towards its deliverables, but not how those deliverables are still linking up and contributing to the system change. So that's what we're trying to evolve a project M&E system to do, to make that a continuity. So the project itself is designed and is looking at those more system level indicators. So if you go to thanks. So the first one, I would say, is this issue of strategic intent. So the project would have its objective that you hope the project will do when the deliverables are met, but what we're now proposing is that every intervention, whether it's a subsidy repurposing or some landscape project, would also have its North Star. What is it trying to contribute to the system change itself? So you're actually making that continuity and that connectivity between the project and its contribution to the system. And then the other main one is these domains of change. What we've captured is saying that these 6 areas are, you know, for best intents of purposes, the most important structural patterns to be looking at. So if you are affecting or contributing to any of these 6 areas, your project or intervention is contributing to systems change. So the more any project is keeping an eye on any of these areas, then they have a better sense of whether their project deliverables that they are doing on an annual basis are actually contributing to systems change. So if you're training farmers, as a very basic example, are you actually changing behavior as well? Yeah? Or are you changing the power dynamics that are influencing that farmer behavior? So this guidance is actually trying to connect those project deliverables to systems change.
Thank you, Andrew. Go ahead, second.
Yeah, if I can, I mean, you're asking a question for debate, which we can debate for a long time. But I would say what we are focusing on is really increasing the value for money from the input subsidy programs, from the simple reasons that they take a lot of fiscal space and they can generate much more impact from the transformation point of view. The example of Zambia shown you the excellent, with the same amount of money, actually with a small amount of money because they make some budget savings, they can achieve a lot in terms of crop diversification, improving access to farmers, connecting the private sector, etc. I have just this observation, from my point of view, from the level of when the World Bank, when we work around the world, Africa is the only region where we advocate for agriculture to use more fertilizer, not less. In the rest of the world, let's say especially in Asia, all of our efforts to actually reduce use of fertilizer, because by doing so, they will not sacrifice the food production. You can easily get down by 25-30% and still produce the same amount, but reduce your production costs and then environmental footprint significantly. This is not the case in Africa. In Africa, most agriculture is organic. It's not organic from point of view of us being certified to be organic. No question about it. But with a 10-20 kilogram per hectare, they're killing their soils. And if the farmers cannot master the most proven in the world technology, which is a fertilizer, which is responsible for 40% of the global food production, you take out fertilizer, 40% of food production go on one day. So if they cannot master that simple technology, which proven to work everywhere, is the simplest you can get. I just wonder how much we are pushing for the more complex technologies to be adopted in this part of the world, because it's not just about farmers' knowledge, it requires institutional support. It's a lot of precondition for such technologies to be adopted, CSA or regenerative or others. So we need to stop and think that there's something wrong with adoption of something simple, which works everywhere. What it will take then to adopt something more complex, what we are now pushing. So we are trying to be a bit pragmatic where we have opportunity to push the frontier. Surely we do, but I think the focus of my work to help the countries to use their fiscal resources better and get much more, even when we had just avoiding unsustainable intensification. That's also one of the development objectives which we try to achieve. Thank you.
Sergey, I don't know if any of the other panelists would like to talk about their perspectives on soil health in their country. Jacob, or welcome to come and make some quick remarks, and then if there are any other questions.
Hello.
Go ahead, Jacob.
No, thank you. So for the case of Malawi, I think from what others have said, it's a process. Repurposing is a process. I think what we are trying to do with the pilot is to collect data, learn from the pilot. And so there are soil health indicators that we're tracking, and we're hoping that the data will be used, will be processed, and will be used to engage policymakers, politicians. As you are aware, subsidies are quite political, and so it's important that there is buy-in at the political level. So we are learning through the process. I think, as already indicated, that we are influencing mindset change at the farm level, at the farmer level, to ensure that farmers are able to, know that within their reach, they're able to address some of the issues that affect productivity at the farm level. So it's a process. That's what I can say. We are learning around farmer targeting as well. How can we target farmers better? Work with those that are stepping up. Maybe reprogram those that are hanging in, that they are not really moving, and those that are stepping out, maybe target them with other programs, so that agriculture programs are more targeted and more impactful. So we are hoping that with the process that we have started, we will be able to engage with the executive, with Parliament on this agenda of repurposing. But also we are also learning that really repurposing requires interministerial, intra and interministerial coordination to address cross-sectoral issues that are beyond the ministries of agriculture. So bringing in the ministers of trade, for example, to tackle issues around standards, regulation is also important. So we think we are on the right track. And as Dan said, I think it's important that we keep engaging with all stakeholders that are involved, so that ultimately we can influence the repurposing agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any final questions? Oh, sorry. Nikumba, did you want to just quickly come back first, and then we'll go to you, sir? Just a quick remark, and then.
I just wanted to make a quick remark regarding the question on soil. For Zambia, we haven't had a soil map for quite a long time. But as of last year, we embarked on a huge exercise to do the soil mapping under the SOIFA project. So with this project, we hope to develop an integrated soil information system, which should be able to feed even in input choices under the Farmer Input Support Program. Thank you.
Very much. Over to you.
Yeah, I'm Gerrit-Jan van Uffelen, working with Wageningen University, and we facilitate MEL systems also in protracted food crises. And my question is, well, it's not only complex, it's diverse and dynamic. So when you have a MEL system, how does that then relate to your ability for evidence-informed adaptive programming?
Okay, again, let's see if we find the slides. Yeah, so well. Okay.
If you're okay to just.
So yeah, I was rushed through the presentation, but there was a slide that you saw on the spiral. So that has all the different stages of guiding teams on how to better centralize their learning to adapt the work they are doing to the dynamic situations they're in, because that's exactly the case. You know, projects are designed, they have a 5-year lifespan, things change in that time. And that's exactly one of the key things we're trying to help guide on is we've got to be more dynamic and agile to responding to the changes that are happening, and the guidance is there for exactly that. Thanks.
Over to you.
Thanks a lot for all the different interesting insights. I was wondering, with regards to the repurposing of agricultural subsidies, I mean, measuring that, of course, it's numbers, right? So in that sense, I won't say the process is easy, but measuring whether or not in the end something has changed can be done. I'm wondering, relating to the whole concept of systems MEL, how do you, before you measure if the agricultural subsidies have been repurposed, how in that process do you try and monitor what indications you already see of things that are potentially starting to change, so that as you engage in other countries, you can pick up from these signals and try and understand what were some of the things that triggered things to start moving before there was actual repurposing? Because I think that is what eventually is going to catalyze and speed things up. But often and this is a general thing, not for World Bank or for any, but that's often not done. So I'm really curious if you're embedding that in your projects as well.
Absolutely, and it's excellent question, because that's exactly what we try to do. It takes time between policy action and impact to be seen on the ground, right? And it's very complex. And I think what you really try to encourage is to adopt the best practices in delivering specific programs, which we hope will bring results, which we can measure in a couple of years. Again, changes in soil health, soil quality, you can maybe get in 5, 7, 10 years. You don't see immediate results. But our approach is like a little bit on the climate smart agriculture technology adoption. We look on something which worked in other places: design of the subsidy, e-vouchers, targeting, soil testing for site-specific soil testing, and we believe that it will bring results. But we cannot wait for the results in 5 years to start to share that knowledge with the other countries. We are starting to share that knowledge with the other countries right now on those best practices, which we believe will improve the impact of the programs. And as over time we will be gaining the knowledge through the impact evaluations, how that influence the design of the instruments will feed back into the next loop of the discussion. So, and that's exactly with the climate smart agriculture technology adoption. We cannot wait for the outcomes in the soils to show up. If we see some technology works, sprinkle irrigation, no-till, agroforestry, proven everywhere, let's push it. We'll get MRV later, but let at least in between push for those technologies and learn from the impact as we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergey. I think we've already gone over time, so I'll have to stop it there. But thank you so much for all the questions and your engagement. And there's never enough time to talk about all of these interesting things, but we hope you'll follow up with the World Bank and UNDP websites and look at the tools. I'm just going to hand over finally to Rachel Waterhouse from the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office for some closing remarks.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks everybody for really rich presentations and a really interesting discussion on such a incredibly important topic. We're here in the sidelines of the World Committee on Food Security. We're all aware of the kind of still alarming figures about food insecurity. Of course, we know that varies from country to country. We all have our own context that we're trying to address, but for all of us globally, climate change and nature loss are drivers that, if the current trends continue, are just increasingly going to imperil food security and our food production and stable supply chains, which kind of points to the enormous complexity of the food systems that we're trying to deal with, as Stefanos so clearly set out at the beginning, and which we've been talking to. How do we really try and change and understand what's changing in such complex systems where we're trying to deliver food security, but also livelihoods, to address climate change, to address nature loss in such a complex and interacting way? The systems where interventions to promote one objective can so easily end up undermining or defeating other objectives, and we've heard about this in some of the policy experiences that we talked about today. For example, when governments are sending out sort of fertilizer subsidies with the aim of helping farmers to increase production, but then over time it inadvertently can lead to soil degradation, to dependence on expensive inputs, to increasing greenhouse gas emissions and escalating climate change, in turn undermining food security. So faced with such complexity, inclusive processes are absolutely vital to ensure policies and programs are designed to deliver shifts that change farming and help farmers to move to more sustainable, productive systems. That's one reason why the UK is so pleased to be working with the World Bank, with partner governments and with Climate in this endeavour to bring different stakeholders and voices to the table. To help navigate this complexity, it was also great to hear about the MEL 360 tool and the sort of this dynamic interactive and systems-based approach that can help policymakers to track unintended as well as intended consequences and provide the evidence we need to refine and redirect and reorient policies and investments, as well as practical evidence. And thank you, Sergey, for sharing the approach and rich experience that's emerging from the work of your team and the World Bank, working in partnership with UK, Germany, and many countries that have that are asking for and getting support to look at these inclusive processes for policy repurposing, from analysis through to shaping design and decisions. And it was really great to hear both from Zambia and from Malawi, Climate, from Jacob and the Farmers Union, sharing your experience on sort of inclusive policies on how to design and pilot and test and again kind of come up with the indicators that can help guide governments and all of us towards more effective policies that help channel investment to environmentally sustainable production. Yesterday, the UK and the World Bank co-hosted a workshop which is part of our Agriculture Policy Dialogue series, and we discussed the importance again of measuring change and establishing robust indicators and means of verification. I think the colleague raised just now again the difficulty of identifying how challenging it is to identify the kind of indicators that we can use in a short time to address changes that are long-term. How do we know if these policies are really helping to promote soil health improvements? So we do need robust indicators and evaluation tools to help us measure and attract the agriculture and investment that can help us deliver a lasting food security. So it is a really complex topic. It's wonderful to have so many engaged experts and colleagues working on this and bringing different stakeholder voices together. Thanks again for all the experiences and viewpoints you've shared today, and I hope we can continue this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're done. You're released.